Amen.
All right, we're going to talk about Jacob's 12 sons and the 12 tribes. So go to the 12 tribes of Israel chart to start out with. And it just goes through the families. This one. Starting out with Abraham and Sarah, who got the promise and kind of messed up all the way along the line. We have messes up, but that's just help us know that it doesn't matter when we mess up as long as we repent. So Abraham and Sarah had Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah and did the same naughty thing that Abraham had done twice to Sarah, saying it was his sister and not his wife. But whatever, you learn from your father. So then they have Jacob and Esau, and obviously Jacob is the chosen one. And we know the story of Jacob, who had to run from, stole the father's blessing and pretended he was Esau and got the blessing. And Esau had sold him his birthright prior to that for lentil soup, because he came in from the field starving to death and sold his birthright for the lentil soup. And that was with Rebekah's urging that Jacob went to Isaac and got the blessing. And he said, you don't feel like Esau, and you don't sound like him. And he lied, being the deceiver he was, because that was what his name means, deceiver. He was the second one out of the womb of Rebekah, but he was holding on to Esau's heel. Yeah.
Is Esau?
No, Esau's not on here.
Oh, okay.
He was the other son of Isaac, the twin of Jacob. So Jacob now runs from Esau and goes to Laban, who is Rebekah's brother, because she said, I want you to marry inside the family. Don't marry these Canaanite pagans, which is what Esau did. And so the deceiver gets deceived, because he's so infatuated with Rachel. He wants to marry Rachel. And Laban says, work for me for 7 years and I'll give you Rachel for your wife. He worked for 7 years, and the night of the marriage, Leah went in, and everybody says, how could he not know it was Leah? Because they were probably, there's just speculation because it's extra biblical, that she was heavily veiled, and he was probably had some wine and stuff and really didn't know. And so when he woke up in the morning, it's Leah. Poor Leah, can you imagine? Poor. And he was not very happy, so he went to Laban and said, what's going on? You promised me Rachel. And he said, oh, no, that's not how we work it here. The oldest sister always marries first. And then he said, well, I still want Rachel. And he said, well, you're going to work 7 more years if you want Rachel.
Wow.
But he got married to Rachel. He didn't wait the 7 years. The end of the week of the celebration for Leah, he got married to Rachel. And it doesn't say whether or not they had another celebration or what. And from that point on, as we go through here, Leah always feels hated and unloved, even though she has 6 of the 12 sons of his, and keeps thinking, if I have one more son, maybe he'll love me now. And it just never happens. Except the one interesting thing when I was going through this is when Joseph had the dreams that said, you're all going to bow down to me. And this is after Rachel had died. And Joseph said, the brother's going to bow down. Then he had the second set of dreams and says, everybody's going to bow down to me. And Jacob's response was, you and your mother are going to bow down to you. Your mother and I are going to bow down to you. And that was referring to Leah. It wasn't, Rachel was gone. So maybe by that point, Jacob had become a little bit more. Although when we go through the story of Rueben, that when he did the sin that took him out of everything, that, I forgot what I was going to say. Whatever, moving on, it'll come to me. And also what I found when I was doing the, number one, the Jewish commentators are much more sympathetic towards Rueben and the situation, because they're saying, well, we'll get into that, the details, but much more sympathetic to Rueben and what actually happened there. And the Bible says he slept with Bilhah, and end of the story, and that Jacob knew right away, but never did anything. Just like if you were here for the Dinah Club. Huh?
Who's Bilhah?
The mother, the concubine that was Rachel's concubine that
Oh.
Jacob also slept with, the one that has, down here, look down, Jacob, Bilhah had Dan and Naphtali, and she was Rachel's servant, and Zilpah had Gad, was Leah's servant, and had Gad and Asher. And some of the commentaries say that Zilpah and Bilhah were actually half-sisters of Rachel and Leah.
Oh.
Extra biblical that they were actually daughters of one of Laban's concubines. Yeah, pretty incestuous, you know, whatever. So it makes it even worse what Reuben did.
I can't keep
I
up
know.
with them.
So anyway, starting out, when Jacob was dying, he called all his sons to him and said, I'm going to do the blessings, which when you read them, Reuben's wasn't, most of them aren't really blessings. They're just what's going to happen to you in the future. And especially, so go to Genesis 49, 1-4. And this is going to be easier biblical work. You're not going to be flying all through the Bible like a lot of the other studies we've done. Because this is mostly going to be in Genesis and Exodus, Deuteronomy, and such.
49,
So, 49, 1-4. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, and that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. And notice he calls himself Jacob and Israel. Jacob was his given name before he had the fight with the angel God and did his hip, and then he became new name of Israel, but still limped his entire life.
Was it an angel or was it God? Do you think it was God? Move forward.
I don't know.
You can't touch God.
Well, was it? I don't know. I don't know. Probably, yeah. All right. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. So Reuben's probably standing there and go, whoa, this is good. I'm thou art my firstborn, my might. Then it hits the fan.
Mm-hmm.
Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. And that's interesting, because first it seems like he's talking directly to Reuben and says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. We went up to your father's bed, then defileth it. And then he must have turned to the other sons and went up to my couch. So he was putting Reuben down. And what this unstable as water means literally like boiling water that goes everywhere. And that was the symbolism of the unstable emotions. It's a vivid metaphor for the unstable emotions. And the interesting thing is, all the prophecies when we talk about the sons came true. Reuben never had much influence in Israel. There was no judge, no leader, no warrior, no prophet that came from his tribe. Although some of the Jewish commentaries say that Hosea, the prophet Hosea, was from the tribe of Reuben, but others say no, he's from the tribe of Issachar. So it's it doesn't say actually in the Bible that Hosea was his descendant. And that's what you can really only go by. I mean, you can look to these other extra biblical and get interesting insights, but whether or not it's true, you just got to stick to the Bible. And also, though, in this is actually biblical. 1 Chronicles 11:42, he lists Adinah as one of David's mighty men, and he was a Reubenite. So there were borderline, and they were. And get on later that they were fierce warriors for a while, and they helped David defeat Saul and become king. But then it seems like they turned back to Saul's family. So they were unstable, just what they said. All right, the birth of Reuben, which is in Genesis 29, back to 29, 31 and 32.
Genesis
29, 31, and 32.
31 and 30.
All right. I'm on 30. I don't want it, doesn't say what I wanted. All right, 31 and 32. And it's, well, starting at 30. Jacob went in also unto Rachel, and he loved Rachel. He loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. This is after he was deceived. And when the Lord saw that Leah, it's Leah or Leah, some of the commentaries said Leah, some said Leah, was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Rueben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Sad. And this is, we were talking, Karis and I last night, about, this is kind of the same story as Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah was the Elkanah's 2 wives, and Peninnah had kids, and Hannah couldn't have kids, and she was always provoking Hannah because he loved Hannah. It's just like he loves Rachel, Elkanah loved Hannah. And so, but Karis thinks that Leah probably provoked her too, but it doesn't say that but there was always this constant competition between the 2 of them. So then we have Reuben's name has a spiritual message that God sees our pain, that he sees Leah's pain, and that she was valued and heard, and so, but still didn't get Jacob's love, and whether she did through the whole ordeal of everything. Although the interesting thing is, Leah is buried next to Jacob in where Abraham and Isaac and everybody's buried, and Rachel died in childbirth on the way to Canaan and buried in Bethlehem, and there's a monument that's still there today to her, to Rachel. But she wasn't buried with Jacob, who loved her, which I find kind of interesting that he didn't, like, take her back. Right, take her back. So I don't know, because Joseph did that, and supposedly when we get, and more extra biblical, that happened to Rueben too. He told his sons to take me back, and the extra biblical says that he was buried in that same place. So don't know though. And supposedly during his upbringing that Rueben was treated as the elder son and with the birthright and everything, and took his responsibilities seriously. And one of the stories about that is with the mandrakes. And did you get the picture of those or no? Thank you. All right, Genesis 30, because mandrakes look like a human body, and that's why they thought that they were, did increase fertility in that. And they are really interesting. You need to Google it and look at what they look like, because they're really interesting.
Can you believe what Google says?
Yeah, that one I do. That one not everything, but that one. So in Genesis 30, 14 to 17. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them into his mother Leah. And he was very devoted to his mother, and throughout this thing, he was very close to his mother. And that's another thing about the thing about sleeping with Bilhah, why that happened, what actually happened, the Jewish commentary version versus the biblical version. But anyway, and Reuben went in the days of harvest and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And Leah said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. So they bargained. She gave him some of the mandrakes so Leah could sleep with Jacob. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night.
Wow.
That is so sad. And I also thought, out of the field, stinky, oh, whatever. But I mean, he must have been quite a hunk or something. I don't know.
And to be a man and be told what, by
who are you going to sleep with?
Oh, he did whatever Rachel said. I mean, it seems like that. The Bible doesn't say, whatever Rachel said, Jacob did. But I guess that he was so infatuated and in love with her, Rachel said. But how degrading for Leah. But, but she wanted to have, for him to love her. So, all right.
Number 17.
No, I'm moving on. Okay.
Oh.
All right. So then the next thing is, all right, Rachel dies. Then, and we talked about on the way to Canaan near Bethlehem. The memorial is still there today. And that's when, okay, after Rachel died, what happened was, that's when Reuben slept with Bilhah. And it's just one short verse, 35:22, Genesis 35:22. And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land, Jacob, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it, but didn't do anything until he rebuked him so strongly, 40 years later when he died, but it was just like when the whole Dinah thing happened, he didn't do anything.
What verse?
22, 35:22. All right. And what the Jewish commentaries say, a lot of them say he really didn't sleep with her. What he did, he was afraid that once, because Rachel was dead, then Bilhah would then become the favorite of Jacob because it was Rachel's servant. So he went in and he moved Jacob's bed. Jacob must have had a bed in each of these tents, all the 4 tents, or maybe just the one with Rachel. Right.
It is a soap opera.
That he just, all he did was he went in and either disturbed everything or moved Jacob's bed into Leah's tent because he thought that was an abomination, that this servant girl was now going to be Jacob's favorite. Well, that's not what the Bible said he slept with her. So I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. And also, a lot of the commentaries say the things that Reuben did really should be put on Jacob's plate because he didn't treat him as the oldest son. He always favored the sons of Rachel, and was probably, that he kind of ignored him and everything, and whatever he tried to do, was just kind of, oh well, Rachel's my favorite. And you see, when kids know when there's favorites, mm-hmm. and they react accordingly, how you're growing up, and your parents are the, most important. And the other sons knew too,
Well, they know before you do sometimes.
Right. All right, so, then the next thing, the good thing, the Jewish commentaries also said that if he did actually sleep with her, it was a moment of passionate loss and lust, and it wasn't premeditated rebellion. Other commentaries say it was rebellion, and he was trying to usurp Jacob's power. Because remember Absalom, what he did when he tried to get the kingship from David, he went and slept with the concubines that David had left in the palace, which real nice, left the concubines. He took them up on the roof and had sex with all of them so the whole Israel could see. And that was just to say, when you did that, that was saying you usurped the father's power and you're taking over now. So some of the commentaries say that's why he did it, and because he was also so upset that, that Bilhah maybe was now taking Rachel's place. And then it was rebellion, but it didn't seem to work. The thing is too, even though he did this, he was never thrown out of the family. Jacob didn't even mention it until he's dying. So, and who knows if the brothers knew or not? Probably. And one of the stories said that when Jacob came back from the fields or whatever and went into Bilhah, she said, I can't be with you because I've been defiled by your son. Who knows? That's also extra biblical. And you read all these stories that, are cute, but who knows if they're really true? Well, not cute. That wasn't cute. All right, so the next thing we know about Reuben, which is also taken two different ways by who's looking at it, in Genesis 37, 31 to 32. This is when the rest of the 10 went out to do the flocks, and they were supposed to be in Shechem. And so Jacob sent Joseph to Shechem and said, go see what's going on with your brothers. And if everything's okay, like he kind of didn't trust the brothers, but who knows. So Joseph goes and he gets to Shechem and nobody's there. So he talks to some of the people in Shechem and he said, oh, those are those shepherds, they went to Dothan. So then he goes up to Dothan. And this whole trip from Hebron, where Joseph started, to Dothan was 50 to 60 miles. So this wasn't a short trip. So he gets up to Dothan, and the brothers see him coming because he has his coat of many colors on, which was just such a provocation to the brothers, in which another thing could be put late on Jacob. You know, okay, you liked him a lot, but why would you provoke the others? So he came up and they go, oh, the dreamer, let's kill him, you know, we've had enough of him. And at that point, Rueben says, no, let's not kill him, let's not shed his blood, let's just throw him in a pit and let him die there. And he did, and his thinking was, I'll come back after, you know, later, get him out of the pit and take him back to Jacob. Well, two things about that. Pits in those days could have scorpions and snakes that could have killed him. So that wasn't such a great idea to put him in a pit. And the other thing is that he should have exerted his elder son. He was supposed to be in charge of all of them, but that could have been, you know, partly because of the way Jacob treated everything. He should have said, you know, we're not doing this, I'm taking him back to dad, that's it. But he was either afraid of his brothers or whatever, and so he just said that. And then the other interesting thing, he left. Don't know why, don't know what for, he left. And one of the commentaries said he went to go back home to Jacob to help him, 50 or 60 miles. That would take you a couple days, I would think. And then he came back, and then when he came back, Joseph was gone. Well, I can't go with that one because that would have taken days to get to Jacob and then come back. So anyway, whatever, he left.
He's a fast walker.
Yeah, amen. Maybe we had a fast horse. But the point is, he shouldn't have left. He knew what the brothers were thinking. He should have either exerted his authority or stayed around. Well, obviously, after he left, the Ishmaelites came, Midianites, the same people. They're called Ishmaelites in one place and Midianites in another. Come and they say, we can make money here. So they sell Joseph as a slave for 20 pieces of silver. And before this happened, he's in that pit screaming and yelling, apparently, you know, get me out, blah, blah, blah. And they're eating lunch. They were really moved by they're just having their lunch. And then because this was on a trade route from Egypt into, from other side into Egypt. And so they see them and they sell them for 20 pieces of silver, which I couldn't really figure out how much, 20 shekels of silver. And that was the standard price for slaves in that day, but it depended on how old you were and what good shape you were in. He was probably young and in good shape. And they took the coat. And so Rueben comes back and said, what'd you do? And they said, you know, what they did. And he said, and instead of saying, it seems this is more Rueben narcissistic, what will I do? No, what happened to Joseph? What will I do? They have to go back and tell Jacob what's happened, you know. It was about him. It wasn't about actually what happened to Joseph. So, anyway, they take the coat and they put animal's blood all over it. And when they go back to Jacob, they say, you know, he was killed by animals. And Rueben doesn't dispute that. You know, Rueben could have at that time busted his brothers and said, no. But I think Rueben didn't know what was going on at that point, didn't know what to do. All right, so then we have Joseph in Egypt, and, you know, we'll go into his story in more detail. But he's in Egypt and ends up being, you know, the second highest official in Egypt next to the Pharaoh. And they go, and famine happens. And so Jacob sends his sons, not Benjamin, but the other 10, to Egypt to get food. And they get the food and go back to Jacob, but they get the food, and Joseph had put the money that they brought to buy the food back into their sacks. And when they get back, they said, "Oh my goodness!" And Joseph also said, "Don't come back without the youngest son." And they said, "Oh, our father will never let us do this. Don't come back. You're not getting any more food unless you come back with the youngest son." And so they get back, the food runs out. But that's another interesting thing. The second time they go, Jacob tells them in 43:11 to take, when they're going back the second time, and they're supposed to be taking Benjamin. In chapter 43:11, and their father Israel said unto them, if it must be so now that you have to go, do this, take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices, and myrrh, nuts, and almonds. So they did have some food. I mean, you may not be able to live on spice and almonds and stuff, but they weren't totally. But so anyway, Joseph said, don't come back. You're not getting any food unless you bring your youngest brother. So they go back, and the first time is when they take Simeon. That Joseph said, you know, if you don't, I'm taking one of you, and he cuffs Simeon right in front of all the other brothers, which is very interesting because Simeon was one of the Simeon and Judah were the two that were big on selling him, either killing him or selling him. So then when they go back and they say, we have to come back because there's no food and we have to take Benjamin. And so he said, no, you're not, Joseph's gone, Simeon's gone, you're not taking Benjamin. So in Genesis 42:21 and 22 is when Joseph says, 42:21 and 22, and bring your youngest.
What was it?
Genesis 42, start at 19. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your house. And that's when he has Simeon cuffed in front of him. But bring your youngest brethren to me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the anguish of his soul when he was crying out to him, when he was in the pit, when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And they're saying all this in front of Joseph, but they don't realize he can understand them because they think he's Egyptian, and he's been talking through an interpreter. So he's hearing all this. And Rueben answered them, saying, spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? Therefore, behold, and also his blood is required. So he's rebuking him, saying, you didn't listen to me then, and that's why this is all happening to us. However, he didn't take a strong enough stand. If he'd been strong like that at the time, this might not have happened. Of course, then the whole history of the world could have changed. God did this for, as Joseph says in the end, you meant it for evil and God meant it for good to save the family.
In those days, was the older child the leader?
Yes, they got the birthright, they got the preeminence. He should have had the birthright that ended up going to Joseph's two sons. He should have had the prophecy of the future that went to the Messiah that went to Judah, and he should have had the priestly line that went to Levi. He lost it all because of the thing with Bilhah. Although, like I said, Jacob has. Genesis 46, 8 and 9, the next round. And there's another. Sorry. Where Jacob, Reuben goes to Jacob and says, "I will go and I'll protect Benjamin, and if I don't come back with Benjamin, you can kill my two sons as ransom." All right, that's looked at once again in two ways. Some say he's really, concerned about Benjamin and he's willing to give up two of his sons for this. Other of the commentaries say that's just another example of his instability, that he would say, kill my two sons, to do this. Well, anyway, Jacob doesn't buy it. Jacob says, no. So Jacob never obviously trusted Reuben, and especially with the Bilhah thing. So what happens is Judah, which should have done, how Reuben should have approached Jacob, but who knows, based upon his sin, that Judah said, I will go, And if something happens to Benjamin, it's gonna be on me, and I will live with it for the rest of my life, but we gotta go, cause we're all gonna die. The little ones, Benjamins will die, the wives will die, we gotta go. So Jacob relents and said Judah can take Benjamin and go. So, Genesis 46, 8-9, this is when, when this is the names, the 4 sons of Reuben, and it tells about he goes to Egypt and names the 4 sons, and he has 4 sons, and 8-9. The sons of Reuben were number 9. And these are number 8, and these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanak, and Palu, and Hezron, and Carmi. So I don't know which of the 2 of the 4 he was going to sacrifice, but those are the sons. And that's the only a notice that you have about, except for an extra biblical, it says when Reuben was dying, his sons came, and he admonished, that his sons and his brothers came, and he admonished them that never commit adultery. So this was, but that's not in the Bible, that's just what, you know. So, then we went over Jacob's, blessing, which wasn't a blessing, and 49, 3 and 4, where he says you're unstable as unstable water, and you know it's all going to turn out not good for you. But then there's an addition. Moses, before going into the promised land in Deuteronomy, addresses all the tribes and gives them, kind of like Jacob did. So go to Deuteronomy 30, I hate saying that word, it's so hard for me. 33:6. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy 33:6. And this is the blessing that Moses did. He does them on all of them, but this is specifically Reuben. Let Reuben, Deuteronomy 33:6. And let 33:6. Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. And what that's interpreted as saying, it's a blessing, and even though he sinned, and Jacob didn't treat him so well, that he continued as one of the tribes, and that his past misdeeds were kind of forgiven. And Moses had the last word on the blessing, so I guess we can go to that. But Reuben's descendants kind of followed in Reuben's footsteps. So in the tribal history, there was a first census in the wilderness, and when they were wandering through the wilderness, and in the wilderness, each of the tribes had specific places where they marched and where they were set around the tabernacle. And so Reuben was on the south side, but anyway, in the wilderness, Reuben numbered 46,500 men of war. That's when they took the census, that everybody over 20, women didn't count, of course, took the census, and men over 20 were census because those are the ones to go to war. And in Numbers 121, it said Reuben had 46,500 men of war. But then, at the end, when they did a second census, it'd fallen. He only had 730 men of war. So this seems to be like your tribe is going down. And also when they said that there was no anybody of notice that in Reuben's tribe, it does say the prince of the tribe was Elazar ben Sudur, whose oblation is described in Numbers 7:30, who gave an oblation to the Lord. There was a Reubenite among the spies, which was not really a good thing, because he was one of the spies that came back and said, we can never take over the land of Canaan. We're like grasshoppers to them. And then the really killer was when the Korah incident, when Korah, who was a Levite, rebelled against Moses and Aaron, and his second in line were 2 Reubenites, Dathan and Akron, and it's in Numbers 16. Go to Numbers 16, And this was kind of the prophecy that was talked about of what's gonna happen to Reuben and to Reuben's descendants. Numbers, oh dear. 16, 12 to 14, Numbers 16, 12 to 14. And Moses said to the call, Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Elihu, which said, we will not come. Because Moses was in control and he called all these people, they were gonna have a meeting, and these two Reubenites wouldn't come. So we're not gonna come. And so then Numbers 16, 12 through 14. 12 through 14, when Moses called them and they said, we're not coming. Is it a small thing that thou hast brought us? This is what the Reubenites say to Moses in their rebellion. Is it a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of the land that flowed with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, except thou make thyself altogether a prince over us? So they're saying, Moses and Aaron shouldn't be over us. You brought us out of Egypt and the land of milk and honey. Kind of forgot they were slaves and getting worked to death.
Yeah.
And moreover, thou hast not brought us into a land that floweth with milk and honey, or given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Wilt thou put the eyes of these men out, the eyes of these men, and we will not come up? And Moses was very wroth and said unto the Lord, respect not their offering. I have not taken one ass from them, neither have I hurt one of them. And Moses said to Korah, be thou and all thy company before the Lord, thou and they and Aaron tomorrow. So Moses goes to God and says, do something. They won't listen to me. And so God said, call them all together tomorrow. And this is what happens on the morrow. 31 through 34.
On where?
And Numbers 16, back to Numbers 16.
31 through 34.
Okay, so it says, so Moses is talking to him and telling him you shouldn't have rebelled. And it came to pass as he it made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave under that was under them. So Korah and the two Reubenites, Dathan and Abiram, are standing out in front, and Moses is rebuking him, and they said before he got through it, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods. And they and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. So he called them, they do come this time, and he tells them that God has rebuked them for the rebellion. And before he even gets done speaking, in front of all of Israel, because all of everybody's out watching this, the ground just opens up and takes Korah and all his family, and Dathan and Abiram and all their family, and just swallows up. Kind of a good lesson, you better not rebel. But the fact is they were Reubenites, and this is the history of the Reubenites. Their identity, and once they cross the river, and we'll talk about that, because they're on the east side of the Jordan, on the Trans-Jordan, with the tribes of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh. First they asked Moses, let us stay, we don't want to go into Canaan. We want to stay on the other side of the river, because that's the good lands for our cattle and everything. And the underlying thing of what he didn't say is we really don't want to fight. And Moses was really upset at them at that point. He said, I'm not going to allow that unless you agree that you're going to come and fight until we conquer Canaan. Otherwise, you're going to come into Canaan with everybody else. And so they say, yes, we'll fight and leave our little ones and our cattle and all that there, and we'll come and fight to help the rest of the tribes overtake Canaan. And they do that. However, they First Chronicles, go to oh no, I forgot about the great altar controversy. Go to Joshua 22. Right before Judges, Joshua 22. And this is just incidences how the Reubenites were almost always at odds with the rest of the tribes, except for Gad and Manasseh, because they were all into getting their flocks good land. So Joshua 22, 10 to 12. And when they came into the borders of Jordan, they are in the land of the Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see. So they're on the other side of Jordan, and they build this great altar. And the rest of the tribes are totally upset because they say that, they're apostasy and they're trying to overtake us, and they're also going to be against God. But what happens is they respond, the Reubenites and the Gads and everything respond in 22 to 25 and say, the Lord is God of gods, the Lord God, he knoweth, and Israel he shall know. If it be in rebellion or in transgression against the Lord, save us not this day, that we have built us this altar not to turn from following the Lord, or to offer thereon burnt offerings, because you were not supposed to have an altar other than going into the tabernacle for the burnt offerings. But we have rather done it for fear of this thing, saying, in time to come your children might speak unto our children, saying, what have you to do with the Lord God of Israel? For the Lord hath made Jordan border between us, and you children of Reuben, children of Gad, have no part in the Lord. So your children shall make our children cease from fearing the Lord. Therefore we say, let us now prepare to build us an altar, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifice, but that it may be for a witness between us and you and our generation after us, that we might do the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings, with our sacrifices, and with the peace offerings, and that your children may not say to our children in time to come, you have no part in the Lord. So they're saying,
I'm sorry, is that 22 to 25?
yes, 22
to 27.
Oh, 27.
Yeah, 27. And they convinced the other tribes, we only built this altar because we want to make sure our children remember who God is. We're not doing it for sacrifice, we just want our children to remember who God is. And there could have been a great civil war at that point. But Phinehas, who was the head of this, that came down, the high priest came down and they said, okay, we believe you, so that's fine, you can do it. However, in Judges is 5:15 to 16, and this is the story of Barak and Deborah going after the Canaanites. And I have a problem with Barak, but we talked about Deborah. So they were going after the Canaanites, and then in Judges 5:15 to 16, this is in Deborah and Barak's song, and this is what they say about Reuben's tribe. Judges 5:15 and 16. All right, 5:15 and 16. And the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar and also Barak. They also sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben there was great thoughts of heart. Why abodest thou among the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flocks? For the divisions of Reuben there were great searching of heart. This means that Reuben refused to come and help Deborah and Barak. And this was another prophecy that was fulfilled, that they, didn't stand with their brothers and help. And this was just another incident of them living up to them being unstable, etc. However, we also talked about this in one of the others. Go to Judges 20, Judges 20:10. And this was after the thing with the Benjaminites who raped the concubine until she died. The Levite that went, well, that's a whole what he did. But anyway, the Levite came into the city. They wanted to have him, and instead of the people he was staying with, threw out the concubine, and these Benjaminite men raped her all night long, and she died. And in the morning she came crawling to the door, and they opened the door and she was dead. And so what the Levite did, who had the concubine, cut up the concubine into 12 pieces and sent them to each of the tribes of Israel and say, look at what the Benjaminites have done. And so then all the tribes were so appalled about what happens. They all got together and went after the Benjamites. And this Rueben did participate in this. And finally, though, they had destroyed almost all the Benjamites until they decided, well, there's not going to be a tribe, and we really need to stop. So then they brought these pagan women down to the Benjamites that were left over, so they were still at least part of the tribe. But they did unite with in the violence. Nice. All right. And they could be good warriors, and they when they went into war and when they helped David, they cried to God, and they did acknowledge that God said, "Help us, God, in this to be victories in this war." So there was points when they went back and forth, and they helped David become kings. They were one of the major parts of the tribes that fought with David to become king. But in the end, it says that, they kind of turned back to the family of Saul, because they were united with Saul before, and then the whole thing between Saul and David happened, and then they did help David become king. Then also another point that the commentary said of why they knew that Rueben was unstable in his tribes. They were one of the first tribes that got taken over by the Assyrians. They came in, Tiglath-Pileser, and took the tribe of Ruben, and also Gad, and also the half tribe of Manasseh, because of by that time, when this happened, the Assyrian conquest, they had almost turned into total apostasy. That they were now, what they had feared during the thing with the altar, what the other tribes had feared, that they would turn against God, they actually did. And that's why they were one of the first tribes to be taken over by the Assyrians. But as I stated with the Jewish commentaries said that Ruben repented after his sin, that he sincerely repented, and he fasted and prayed and tried to do good after that, and that he was really repentant. I couldn't find any of that in the Bible, that he repented and that he fasted and prayed and everything, because it would seem to me when Jacob was giving him his blessing, he could have said something, "I'm really sorry, Dad, for what happened. Why didn't you give me earlier?" But it doesn't. The Bible doesn't say that. Well, it's not to say he didn't repent, because in Ezekiel 48, so go to Ezekiel 48, further on down the line in the prophets. Ezekiel 48, and Ezekiel 48, 6 and 7. All right, Ezekiel 48, and in this chapter of Ezekiel, he's talking about the reworking of the tribes after them in the millennium. And so 6 and 7. And by the border of Ephraim from the east side even unto the west side, a portion for Reuben. And by the border of the Reuben from the east side and to the west side, a portion for Judah. And the important thing about that is that Ezekiel is prophesying that Reuben has been forgiven by God and is now going to be in the millennial kingdom. And the interesting thing is, he's been now beside the tribe of Judah, who's the tribe that has Messiah. So he's been moved from the other side of the Jordan. Now in the millennial kingdom, he's going to be just beside Judah, which is a good sign for Ruben, because he's in a much higher position than he was. And that it seems to indicate that God is forgiven to him and mercy. And also indicates that he has been sealed. He's been sealed by God. Even he's been forgiven and been sealed by God. And also, most of the commentaries say Reuben, we don't hear about Reuben after the Old Testament, but in Matthew 19:28, and Luke 22:30, 19:28, and Luke 22:30.
Matthew 28, what?
Matthew 19:28, and Luke 22:30. This is Jesus, and in both of those places, Jesus says the 12 tribes, and the 12 tribes shall be judging. And this is indicating that Reuben's back in the graces, that he's going to be one of the 12 tribes that is going to be judging. And then finally, the last time we hear about Reuben, which is another good indication for Reuben, because it gets better for Reuben. In Revelation 7:5, when they talk about the 144,000, that it was sealing of 12,000 of Reuben's tribe among the redeemed. So his 12,000 are named as part of the 144,000 of the redeemed, which indicates God's grace and mercy, and that he has been forgiven, and now he's part of the he and his tribe are part of the redeemed. And the other interesting thing, a little tidbit, his stone was the red ruby. And the high priest had 12 stones on their robe, and his was the first stone and named with it was etched with the red ruby, and it etched with the name of Reuben. And the red ruby was supposed to indicate fertility and a good pregnancy, and that kind of indicates what happened, things that happened in Reuben's life. And also one of the things says the red ruby represents his blushing and shame from his sin. Who knows? Possibly, because he did get more, he got forgiven and back into the good graces. And what the Jewish commentary says that the main themes about Reuben is his loss of birthright, his loss of the kingship to Judah, and also his loss of preeminence. And the interpretation of the curse or blessing of Jacob is that he wouldn't retain his rightful preeminence, which went to Joseph's sons. And basically, too, he started out well and had said, by the first part of Jacob's blessing, he was his first son, blah, 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 but then he never fulfilled his potential. And once again, though, one can look to Jacob and Jacob's treatment of him.
That's right, because you can set him up for him.
Right.
Yep.
Some rabbinic traditions suggest Reuben did not actually sin with Bilhah, and that it was a misrepresentation of events, possibly stemming from his actions of finding mandrakes for his mother. Also, they emphasize his acts of loyalty, that he tried to save Joseph, and pledging to protect Benjamin when his brothers went to Egypt, and then that his repentance, that he repented, and the Midrash says that he regretted his actions, fasted and repented, donned sackcloth, and tried to get right with God again. Well, once again, that's, it could possibly be very, very true, but a lot of that's not actually in the Bible. It's just commentary, which happens of not just Jewish commentary. The other commentaries have stuff too that
Can
isn't
you
in the
find
Bible.
the commentary on
what?
the computer?
Yeah, you just put commentaries on Jacob or whatever. All right.
The
And
Jewish commentary or the?
Either one. You can say Jewish commentary.
You can say either. You can say Jewish commentary on Reuben, biblical commentaries on Reuben, and you'll get tons of it. All right. So the lessons allegedly that we are supposed to learn from Reuben is, don't trade your legacy for momentary gratification. He gave up everything for his time with Bilhah. That family loyalty is great, but not at the expense of righteousness. He was loyal to his family and tried to do right in a lot of times, but the fact that what he did with Bilhah just kind of negated all that. And Impulsive behavior has consequences.
Oh, don't we know?
You're right.